wrong precinct. Here to weigh in on this important issue in the Supreme Court's decision is the co-founder of Black Voters Matter Fund, LaTosha Brown, and chairman of the California African American Chamber of Commerce, Timothy Allen Simon. Glad to have you both join us. Listen, I'll get right to it. First, the President of the United States addressed this even from Surfside, California. He was asked a question about it. He said he's familiar with it and he will be out campaigning. He says he plans to speak extensively on voting rights and will be going on the road to discuss this issue and the Supreme Court decision. Will that be enough to help alleviate the problems that this decision causes? LaTosha, I'll begin with you.
Absolutely not. I'm glad that he recognizes how egregious this ruling was today, and that it really takes out the teeth of Section 5, that part of the Voting Rights Act, initially Section 2. Section 5 had already been gutted 8 years ago, and now we have a weakening of Section 2. So for the most part, what you really have is a voting rights law that doesn't have any teeth in it. So I think that what we need is, there is no way around it. We've got to have federal legislation to literally protect the rights of voters, and particularly voters of color. In this country right now, we need the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voter Advancement Act. I think it was a devastating blow, but we also have to remember that 3 of the Supreme Court justices that are currently on the court were put in by the voter suppression in chief, President Trump, that his entire time that he has been in office, including currently now, he has literally done everything within his power to marginalize the voting power of communities of color and black and brown voters. And so once again, what we're seeing in this ruling, I think it's a very politicized ruling. Essentially the court is saying that it is okay to discriminate, that even if the impact it disproportionately impacts communities of color, it is okay. Now what you have to do is you have to prove that that was intent. That's the same argument that was used in the poll tax, that the poll tax, everybody had to pay the poll tax, knowing that it disproportionately impact communities of color and black voters in particular. In this particular case, the target was indigenous voters. It was Native American voters that often live in reservations that have P.O. boxes. And so there is a history and a culture of being able to collect their ballots. And so now we have the court, the highest court in the land, that I think is literally aligning itself with white political interests in this country.
Timothy, your concerns about this, the GOP governors of Georgia, Florida, and Arizona have enacted new election measures. And while state lawmakers in 47 states have introduced more than 360 bills that would limit voting rights, who is actually behind this massive effort to restrict voting rights? And how were they able to mobilize so quickly in response to the efforts of so many to make sure that they got out the black and brown vote?
Well, it's Donald Trump who's behind it, and those Make America Great Again followers of Donald Trump. But historically, the Republican Party focused on local elections and state legislatures, particularly during the 8 years of President Obama. I do not agree with the Alito decision, the outcome of the decision. But I will say, in reading the act, there are areas where, and this is what you're going to hear from Republicans, there are areas that have created easy access and multiple accesses to voting. And I do agree with Ms. Brown, we need the federal legislation. We need the enforcement of the initial 1965 Voters' Right Act. But until that time, as we go into the midterms and particularly local elections, it's going to be necessary to study those laws and understand how to defeat them on the ground, meaning in the get out to vote effort that I know Ms. Brown is extremely active and successful in.
So let me ask you both this then, because to your point, Timothy, the president did say today, moments ago when he was in Surfside, Florida, that this decision is mildly, and I'm putting it in quotations here, mildly positive, realizing, as you said, Timothy, it might be easier to vote. But LaTosha, there's still a lot of heavy lifting to do and a lot of work to do. In your opinion, has the GOP systematically and purposely rolled back hard-fought voting rights in an effort to disenfranchise black and brown people and their rights? And where do you go from here?
Any reasonable, rational person can see what this is on its face. The truth of the matter is what we're seeing these attacks on voting rights because Black and brown voters came out in record numbers in 2020. There is just no question about it. You can fix it up and make it be whatever you want it to be, but the truth of the matter is on its face, this is literally being led by an effort to disenfranchise voters that the Republicans have said, are more likely to vote Democratic. I think that what we have to really recognize is, also, even when we look at the court system, let's also be mindful that at one point, the enslavement of human beings was legal in this country. At one point, there was Plessy versus Ferguson. At one point, it was deemed legal that we were 3/5 of a human being. Just because it's legal, just because the court makes a ruling on it, doesn't make it right. So what we have to do is, if democracy, as is laid out in the Declaration of Independence, as is laid out in the Constitution, is ever to be so, then people have to make sure that it is. And so what we have to do is absolutely, we've got to get on the ground. We've got to make sure that we send a strong message of voting rights, that we expect an inclusive and reflective democracy by voting on our local and our state levels. We've got to put pressure in the Senate right now with For the People Act and the John Lewis Voter Advancement Act. If that means suspending or getting rid of the filibuster, we have to do that. And we have to be relentless in saying we will not go back. We will go forward. We demand and will stand in the space for full citizenship in this country. Our rights and our freedom is non-negotiable.
Timothy, I know you want to respond. I'll give you the final word.
There's no area where I disagree with Ms. Brown. I mean, she's an icon in this space. This is the same court that affirmed the Affordable Care Act. This is the same court that has now allowed collegiate athletes, many of whom, the key ones being African American, to now receive revenue for their talent and images. We need a balanced court. That's what we need. And I think possibly the expansion of the Supreme Court could be the remedy. It shouldn't be where the political side overrides the legal side. We as African Americans understand the implication of states' rights. We know what states' rights meant in the formerly Confederate states. So I think there's going to have to be a multitude of efforts on our part on the local and midterm elections, and then have Washington work through the For the People Act and the reenactment of Section 2 and 5 of the Voting Rights Act. So I don't think there's any disagreement here, but I have to look at all the court's decisions and understand that there are occasions where decisions are coming out favorable to us. Lastly, when William Kennedy opted to sit down from the court to arrange with the president his replacement, may God bless her soul, but the same thing should have occurred with Ruth Bader Ginsburg as now that's being discussed with Stephen Breyer. Even though the Supreme Court appointment constitutionally is a lifetime appointment, is that lifetime appointment in the best interest of the people, and particularly the people who elect the president? And I do think there's going to be a greater evaluation of the role of the Supreme Court in our greater democracy.
We will have to leave it there. Thank you for this stimulating perspective and discussion. And of course, the fight continues. LaTosha Brown, Timothy Allen Simon, thank you both for weighing in on this important matter. The World Tonight continues after this.